we hit a wall somewhere. It's not because we know connections, because we're just not making the connections. We're not keeping the connections. But I've never felt like it. That's what I'm saying. He says you can keep adding, but you've got to let that stuff go. My wife, she's
It's here. No hands. Shaking with no hands.
my ignorance is
Oh my God, it's awful. How are you ever do
despite it all.
in spite of all? You mean the regular stuff. Let's plan to do one of these days. Tristan is on. Yes. Cinderella I had on too, but I can't do it. Yeah. Not Cinderella? Okay. Well, it's in my book.
But it's not.
It's not to say Cinderella's not.
Interesting Cinderella. Somebody might just
No.
to get used to the opera, like the CIA.
No. I know that. Yeah, Jackie and I were in Chicago and saw yeah, a couple of weeks ago. Strauss's. Couldn't make it work in terms of logistics, not because the ending of it is really astonishing. You gotta go online and watch it. But
He did it well.
you know, when you put a baby online, it's right there in front of you, and you sit in the balcony theater. It's not, you're not we're spoiled live.
You know, that was my first ever opera.
What's it?
Yeah, January 1990 in Budapest. What was the other one you guys did?
I'm listening to that. An interesting variant. Both problem operas. Both of this.
We'll talk.
I have to ask you also. Just call my name.
I will. Hi, Bob. I talked to him 2, 3, 4 months ago. I don't know if I have his number. Can you? If I know how, if you know how, I'll know. How are you?
Good. How about you?
Good. Doing great. Good morning, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Hope everybody is doing well. As you know, of course, I was away the last 2 Saturdays, but David Singer took over for the first. Seemed a little tepid. Okay, that's more like it. And Rabbi Mulbaum last week. I hear good things about both. So, when I'm away, and I apply this also to poetry, I ask somebody to take over, and lo and behold, they have an excellent session. So it's really so gratifying to me that I would just call on some of you to do it, and it turns out to be a wonderful time. And I'm sure it's very nice to have another approach to things, too. So I know Rabbi Mulbaum really does love to do it, and I'm just always glad to call on her. Thank you to Luke Helsch for the bagels this morning, sponsoring the bagels. Now, really, don't exhaust all of your capacity for applause. We have to spread it out a little bit. And to Jackie Weiner for picking up the bagels. And I know that, Joan Levy helps to organize the pickup. So, Joan, I think you wanted to say something?
I still have opportunities for students to pick up the bagel, the 21st of this month and the 9th of May.
Okay. Everything else, this is for sponsoring or picking up?
That's for picking up.
For picking up.
Yeah. So come see me after we're through here.
If you can do that. No, this is a collaborative process, both sponsoring and picking up the bagels, so it's great that we all participate in this. It just, it makes it work. Okay. So let's continue with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We praise you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who sanctifies us with God's commandments and joining upon us the obligation to immerse ourselves in words of Torah. Amen. Okay, so today the Parsha is Mishpatim, chapter 21 through 24 of Exodus. So what do we have here? We have chapter 20, which we did last week, which is the 10 Commandments, okay? So let's think of those, as one medieval philosopher does, as topic sentences. Saadia Gaon, who is really the first Jewish philosopher, Baghdad, the 10th century, something like that, who said that you can take a piece of paper, I don't know if he said it this way, and write Commandment 1, and then array a lot of other commandments under it. Commandment 2, Commandment 3, and according to Saadia Gaon, we can do all 613 commandments, now 603, under these topic sentences. So what this suggests is that the 10 Commandments have a special status. They are generalizations. And if we asked ourselves, how should we implement them, we recognize that the generalization doesn't answer that question. Let's just take a look at a couple of them. How about chapter 20, verse 12? Honor your father and mother. Okay, that's clear but vague. Because if I think of it as a sentiment, of course it's powerful. I should give honor to my parents. And the word kabed comes from the word that means heavy, weight, W-E-I-G-H-T. Give weight to your parents, dignity, gravitas. I like that idea. My parents brought me into the world. They are the necessary and sufficient conditions for my life, and I ought to accord them special honor. Okay. As an idea, as a sentiment, it's great. How do I do it? Is this just an idea, or as a commandment, does it call us to action? It doesn't tell us how to do it. But if I'm going to do it more than just as an idea, but as a way of dealing with operationalizing the relationship, I need more. What do I need? I need midrash. I need commentary. I need some elaboration. There is a complementary, C-O-M-P-L-E, law in Leviticus 19. You shall revere your parents. Exodus 20, you shall honor your father and your mother, father first. Leviticus 19, you shall revere your mother and your father, mother first. From which the rabbis infer we should honor and revere them both equally. But it doesn't, just those two verses don't tell us exactly how to do this, okay? And the Midrash tells us something about this, and Maimonides codifies it. Honor and revere convey two different kinds of action. Honor is to draw near, revere is to step back. Honor is, for example, to help my parents when they need help, drawing near. Revering recognizes a gap between me and the object of my reverence, and therefore I should step back and not try to bring myself in some equality with them. Whatever you think about all of this, you can see that the fifth commandment doesn't tell us any of these things. You shall not murder. Now the commandment is not you shall not kill, it's you shall not murder. What is murder? Murder is wrongful killing. What counts as wrongful killing? And conversely, what counts as legitimate killing? Is eating meat killing, which is valid, or murder, which is wrong? Going out to war, is that killing? Namely, do we find a justification for it? Or is war always wrong? Thou shalt not murder does not tell us. Don't envy what your neighbor has. And what does that mean? Is it merely a sentiment, or can I operationalize it in some way? So the Ten Commandments, though fascinating generalizations about which we can say a lot of things, the first tablet in the Middle Ages, 2 tablets is not implied here, but in Middle Ages iconography, as over our ark in the chapel, though not in the sanctuary, divided into 2 tablets. The first, we might say, the first 5 are like that. I think you were pointing to it too. Our relationship with God. The second tablet, our relationship with one another. Okay, roughly speaking. What do we make of this? Well, we could say, in order to engage in useful, important activity between myself and my neighbor, I have to first believe in God. In other words, the first tablet provide the premises, or I might say the necessary foundations, for being able to work well with my neighbor. Or I could say, the culmination of the Ten Commandments is to love my neighbor. And therefore, the first tablet is the foundation for what is really important, and that is developing social amity, social comedy, so on. So we can see that the Ten Commandments, though crucial, require something more. Our Torah portion begins, though not systematically, it's not dealing one after another with the Ten Commandments, but it moves in a direction that the Ten Commandments don't, and that is to particularity, to particular actions, do's and don'ts, okay? So that's one of the connections between last week's Torah portion and this week's Torah portion. The Ten Commandments are crucial, but they're not enough. Mishpatim begins to recognize, though not systematically, the need for getting into the details. I want to look at one other passage, and that is in Genesis 18. Genesis 18. Where is this? Okay, very good. Genesis 18, which has two halves, very important chapter. Hospitality, part 1, Sodom and Gomorrah, part 2. Okay? So part 2 starts 18, verse 16. The men set out from there and looked down towards Sodom, Abraham walking with them to see them off. Now the Lord had said, "Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Since Abraham is to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him. For I have singled him out, that he may instruct his children and his posterity." Abraham as paradigm, Abraham as teacher. "For I have instructed him if I've singled him out, that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is just and right, tzedakah umishpat." Okay? So that this lays the foundation for, we might say, what is the characteristic activity of Abraham's descendants? To care about the right and the good. Okay? It's a very famous book by W.D. Ross. Some of you know W.D. Ross, who was a British philosopher early last century. The right deals with obligation, the good deals with value. And I am to recognize what is truly valuable, the good, and I am to do the right thing. So that this is the program, so to speak, of Abraham's descendants. And so when we turn to Mishpatim, we see that this idea, this imperative, is being taken seriously by the biblical author. Let's now get down, now that we've been liberated from Egypt, and we have two kinds of freedom, negative freedom and positive freedom. Negative freedom, freedom from restraint, that's the Exodus itself. But freedom from is not yet sufficient. We have to engage in positive freedom, freedom to organize our society according to our own principles and laws. Okay? There's a very famous essay by Isaiah Berlin. I've referred to it several times. Two kinds of liberty. And Berlin makes a very interesting point. He talks about both negative liberty and positive liberty. But he recognizes that positive liberty can also enslave. Positive liberty itself can restrict the liberty of those over whom it seeks to have control by telling them what to do. So the laws themselves, especially laws that are challenged, for example, by serious exceptions, can also reverse the liberty from. That's sort of an aside here, but I think it's an interesting point. Because now what we see here, beginning in Exodus 20, the Exodus is over. We've been liberated from Egypt. Now what? Now we have to engage in positive liberty. We have to fashion our society in our own terms. First the generalizations, the soaring generalizations, then the particulars. And Mishpatim, of course, is filled with particulars, and nothing is simple. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. That's what I want to do this morning. Just look at certain of the laws and just try to see what's going on here. So chapter 23, verse 5. 23, verse 5. When you see the ass of your enemy lying under its burden and would refrain from raising it, you must nevertheless raise it with him. Okay, so this is one of several passages in the Bible that command caring for animals. I'm gonna give you just a couple of others. The next three are all from Deuteronomy. I won't go there. I'll just tell you what they say. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 14. Which is a second iteration of the Ten Commandments with some significant differences. Among those who we are supposed to give rest on Shabbat are animals, according to this commandment. Okay? So this gives evidence to a kind of empathy for animals who can be exploited just as human beings can be exploited, and we have the obligation to recognize that they too need rest. Although if we didn't recognize it or don't want to follow it, we can work those animals to death, okay? So part of the Shabbat commandment in its second iteration in Deuteronomy 5. Deuteronomy 25, verse 4, don't muzzle your ox or your animal while you are threshing. So while you're going down the rows of the fields and threshing, allow your animal to eat something along the way. The animal is not just an object for your benefit. The animal also has, I don't know how to finish that sentence, rights, feelings, needs, and we need to reach out and recognize that though it might be useful for the farmer to muzzle the animal, more efficient, because if the animal gets hungry all of a sudden and stops, the limit to the efficiency of the threshing. But nevertheless, you have to do that. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 10. Do not tie an ox and an ass together when you're threshing. These are two animals of radically unequal strength, and the ass, the donkey, is likely to be dramatically hurt while the ox is moving along. Something like that. Have to recognize, have to be empathetic to the needs of the non-human beings. Okay? So caring for animals is one of the important imperatives in biblical religion, one of God's creatures. So let's go back to this one. Again, verse 5 of chapter 23. I want to read it, and then I want to see what you think is there. When you see the ass of your enemy lying under its burden and would refrain from raising it, you must nevertheless raise it with him. Okay? What do you see there of interest? Cindy?
There are two parts, care for the animal and also the connection with the enemy.
Good, very good. So caring for the animal is suffering, the animal is not up to the task, and feel empathy for that animal, but also for the enemy. Okay, so what does it mean to think about the need of the enemy? I mean, let's unpack that a little bit.
There's fear and there's gratitude.
I'm sorry?
There's fear and gratitude.
Fear?
If I am on the scene with an enemy on top of the animal in S, I am grateful that it's them and not me.
I'm grateful that it's them, not me.
Yeah, because we were at war, apparently.
Okay.
Possibly. The other issue is fear of what should I do in this tenuous situation to do something that could ensure my continued safety and success, or would protect me from that enemy rising up on their own.
Okay. So Paul has suggested and recognized that this is a fraught situation. My enemy is, I'm at war with my enemy in some way or another. So in a certain way, I'm being asked to surmount that reality. But also, I'm in a situation of fear, because this, after all, is my enemy. And maybe what I want to do is find a way to pacify the situation and help my enemy so that my enemy doesn't strike out at me and I can leave the situation. Arthur?
Your comments in this particular law inspire a couple thoughts. One is, you mentioned Isaiah Berlin, and one of his most famous students is Tim Snyder, who's probably the greatest living scholar on freedom, I would say. And he makes the point that he disagrees with this teacher, Isaiah Berlin. He says the more powerful freedom is the positive freedom in order to do something. And Tim Snyder cites the Exodus and says, just being freed from slavery, from oppression, doesn't get you to freedom. You have purpose. You have to be. And he says today in Ukraine, they don't use the word liberation when the Russian occupied territories are free. There's another word, I'm not sure what it is. Only once they've recovered from the trauma and re-engaged in life are they free. In other words, a purpose too. Now, on this law, reminds me, I really love studying these laws. I remember studying with my mom, and David referenced Rabbi Aiken, who came down to Canton back in the day. And it's such a different feeling here and back then than the usual critique of Judaism from outside the religion, which is that these laws make us a legalistic people. There's a tension between law and love. And I see a lot of love in these laws. They bring love to life in a lot of ways. But I think there's something there. What you're bringing to life here, these laws come to life. They're not dry. Commandment sort of gets away from the love that comes through the commandment.
What's the impulse behind this particular law? And you're suggesting some sort of love as opposed to a kind of logic. I mean, a logical approach might be, wait a minute now, this is a dangerous situation. So there's danger here that love, in your language, tries to surmount.
And I'm not sure it's just love. There's something very profound in this verse.
Well, let's try to.
I mean, think about it. If you really have an enemy, it's a dangerous thing to do anything with this enemy. You're opening yourself up to all sorts of trouble.
Okay.
And you're going to care enough about this animal that you're going to put yourself in your enemy's sights.
Okay. So there's risk here. I might say the greater the risk, the more obvious the risk, the more utopian is the mandate. Because if I will get in trouble potentially for doing this, why do I do it? Because I have an aspiration to not have the relationship of friend and enemy or person and enemy any longer. By doing this, not only do I express a value of my own, I might pacify the situation. In other words, one of the impulses here might be to face the friend-enemy reality and to try to solve it right here at a moment of danger. Okay? Now, we might say that Judaism in important ways is not a utopian religion. It doesn't recognize that all the problems of life are going to be solved, but we can move toward resolution of our problems. You know, the word utopia comes from the Greek that means nowhere. There's a famous book by what's his name? Erewhon. Erewhon is a utopian novel that spells nowhere backwards with a little few changes of the letters. Steve?
Fox renders in verse 5, one who hates you. Different than the previous verse, which is enemy.
Yeah.
And I think the genius here is one who hates tends to objectify, treat as an object, the object of the thing that they hate. And this, in some ways, is to show your humanity, to show that you have care for animals. So the hater versus the hated.
The hater is the enemy.
Well, you're changing the word.
I'm presupposing the change of the word. But who is the one who's hating in this view?
Someone who hates you.
The enemy is the hater.
Okay.
You're not,
My point is.
yeah,
Hate on its own.
Yes.
Tends to lead to a kind of blindness.
Yes.
And objectification.
Yes.
Of the thing that you hate.
yeah.
And this is an attempt to humanize you if you are hated.
The hater tends to, I like the move, but I'm puzzled by it. The hater tends to objectify. So it's my enemy who is objectifying me.
Correct. And this is making me not an object.
Making me not an object. In other words, by my helping him, I move him from a hater to a non-hater.
Changing the story.
Changing the story, but changing the, see, what you're focusing.
I can no longer be an object if I act in this way.
No, I get it. I mean, the plain meaning of this particular law is focusing on the person who is confronting an enemy situation. You're putting the focus on the enemy, the hater, and that by a certain action on the part of the individual, he can transform that hater into something else.
Correct.
Yeah, good.
It's parallel to the prior discussion. You're trying to do what is right.
Yep.
But it's on the word hate.
Yep.
And hate persists where the thing that you hate is showing kindness to animals.
Good. David? And
I read this in the context of that verse 4, where you encounter your enemy's ox or ass wandering, you must take it back to him. So this is not a situation where it's being kind to an animal. It's your relationship with this enemy. And it seems to me that this commandment is directed at my attitude, not at somebody else's attitude. It would be wonderful to change my enemy's perception of me, but what this commandment is asking me to do is to change my perception of my relationship with the other. And I think that's a very important goal, that we should recognize that somebody who is an enemy in one situation is not inherently an enemy in every situation. And therefore, we should try to think of that person as a human being.
that's great. I want to repeat, if I can, your comment. for live streamers as well as for myself. You go back to verse 4 and you suggest that really the focus there, even though the word enemy is used, is on the animal. So verse 5 for you, since we've already dealt in some way with the animal, is really about human relationships. And that the goal of this is to change the nature of the relationship. How should I come to, what's the goal here? How shall I come to see my hitherto enemy? How?
As someone created in the image of God.
Very good. And therefore,
At the very beginning, and therefore, we have to change our way of thinking about the enemy.
okay, you didn't say, which I agree with, to change him into a friend. That may happen, but the step before a friend is to recognize his status as made in the image of God, or to have dignity independent of me. And therefore, by doing this, I come in a way to alter my view of other human beings. Maya?
I think much more simplistically. I think it's psychology. Basically, I hate somebody, I'm going to take it out on somebody else. And what they say is, you can hate him, but don't project that hatred upon an innocent other.
Okay, so you can hate somebody. This is hatred, not necessarily of this person. I'm now in a situation where a prior passion is being applied to this person. Don't do that. Something like that, very good. So you're talking about not the person in this situation exclusively, but
It's human nature.
it's human nature, very good. By the way, the rabbis do say in one of their comments on this is that one of the goals is to suppress the Yetzer Hara, to suppress the evil inclination, as if we have a sense of fear. I think Paul uses that word fear, the fear of the other, and therefore we might diminish that person's status. We recognize the reality of this. If we fear somebody, we try to protect ourselves. But the rabbis also say that part of what's going on here is the desire of the author to transform ourselves, because I bring to it, this is Maya's point, but it could be I bring to the situation, or the situation arouses, because it does say, back to the verse, when you see the ass of your enemy lying under its burden and would refrain from raising it, as if my inclination is already not to do it. So there's something about me here that I might say I ought to be willing to help, but my inclination is to refrain from doing it. And so there's something for me to overcome. Vivian?
This is another reading, a simplification in my head, but these two together, to me, speak to the ethics of warfare.
Okay.
An army is an object. As soldiers, you have no humanity.
Mm-hmm.
One-on-one, you're human. So to me, we're talking about taking prisoners, feeding them, returning their animal, returning their way home. To me, that's what these two verses speak to is war and aftermath. I read it that way just because it's a modern reading, but
So Vivian's view is this is a an example or a model for much larger domains of activity.
It's not one person in an animal.
So the one person in the animal makes very clear what my obligation is, to reach out to the animal, which is certainly part of what's going on here, though David makes the point that it's the relationship with the human being that seems to be more at stake, and to try to humanize the situation, and by extrapolation, this is how I ought to deal with my purported enemies all along.
Well, war is, it seems to be the given. It is, seems to be in nature and in animals, the law of nature.
Yeah.
Strife for resources, for land, for all of it. We compete. But one-on-one, it's a different story.
So Vivian, your point here, I'm trying to remember to repeat the questions. Your point here is that this is a paradigm. It's not only this particular kind of example. It wants to lay down a premise for how we deal with all purported enemies. Okay, very good. By the way, in another verse in Exodus 22, verse 4, it says the same thing, but says it about the ass of your brother. Okay? So now we have two verses, each dealing with a different identity of the other. One is the enemy, the other is the brother. And the rabbis raise the following point or question in the Talmud. You understand that this has to be, we might want to resolve this, which is prior. If the animal of your brother, or I might say friend, requires unloading, and the animal of your enemy requires unloading, let's suppose, by chance, both instances are facing you. First, help your enemy in order, and here's what the rabbis say, in order to suppress the evil inclination, so that the harder thing takes priority because we ourselves need moral education. Okay? So the rabbis are turning this into something which seeks to get to the bottom of my reaction when I face an enemy's animal on the ground. Ivan?
What you just said about suppressing the evil inclination, my first thought was you're not suppressing your own evil inclination, but if you help your enemy, maybe you're suppressing your enemy's evil inclination towards you. So I kind of view this as a psychological thesis of how do you make your enemy less of an enemy.
Very good. I'm going to quote you another rabbinic passage. Who is a hero? The one who turns his enemy into a friend. That's very powerful here. I mean, I like Vivian's idea here that in a way this is not about a particular kind of example, but this becomes a paradigm for, in a certain way, how to transform our relations with others. So there's a responsibility here on the person who runs into another person whose animal has fallen to the ground. Ellen?
Isn't this just the golden rule? To do unto
Notice the problem with the golden rule. There is a problem with the golden rule. I remember once when I was at school that I was taking a course in political philosophy, and I was going to take the follow-up course the next semester from a very famous philosopher, Alan Gaworth. Anybody know Alan Gaworth? Anyhow, he said, well, next semester we're going to start by looking at the golden rule, which is really very problematic. Think of it. The principle on the basis of which I should love one another is my own need for self-love. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So how should I think about this? Well, I would really like this guy to love me. That's my beginning. And therefore, I'm going to treat him in a certain way. Really, it starts with ego. This, I think, is starting with the need for transcendence, the need to help the animal, to help the one who hates you, but in a certain way, thereby to solve some of the problems in your own heart. The proclivity to pass by. Why does it say he shouldn't pass by? Because that's the inclination, that's the implication. His first inclination is to pass by. This doesn't concern me. But no, we should suppress that desire and try to reach out. Michael?
Trying to figure out where to start here. I think there's an unresolvable tension here, or another way of saying it is they're having it both ways. Between, and this is what Arthur, I think, first raised, between sort of a moral and emotional level and a legal or legalistic level. At the beginning, you said that you were struggling for the right words and said that maybe the animal has rights.
Yeah.
Well, that takes it out of the realm of compassion and it becomes a rule, it seems to me. And
Okay.
that's at the level of the brain, not the heart.
What's the level of the heart? Empathy.
Yeah. And then the other place I got hung up is the word must.
Mm-hmm.
Because once it says must,
Mm.
then I don't have a sort of emotional or moral agency anymore. I'm in the realm of, do I follow the rule or not? And there are cross currents of rules and empathy here that are not really clearly distinguished.
I like that. Musts, obligations. You know, I really don't want to do this, but the law says, the rule says, do it. Okay, I'll do it. I'm reluctant, but I'll do it. Whereas empathy isn't facing reluctance. It's a gesture. And by the way, in the Hebrew, the must comes out with the repetition of the verb, right? It says, azov ta'azov. So whenever we have of a verb conjoined with a verb which has a tense and a person, that is an emphasis on the word. Azov ta'azov is not just you must, not just you shall do. If it were just you shall do.
Also the Hashem Hashivenu, previous one.
Okay, very good. Right. Verse 4 that David pointed to. Hashev tashivenu. So there's where the must comes in. I'm just ratifying your point about must with the Hebrew itself. And so what do you think this verse is? Is it working on the law? After all, we started this morning by saying that this is about laws. This is about social rules. And one of the features of a social rule is, if you don't feel like it, tough. You got to do it anyway. You know, come to a red light, I don't want to. But no, you have to do it. So there is, whatever you're feeling, it doesn't matter. So is this more a matter of law than it is of feeling? What do you think about that? I hadn't thought about that question. It's both. Where do you see, is that just a feeling of yours, or do you?
Yeah, I think it's literally the law, but it's opening it up to contemplate as we are here, that there's more to it.
Okay, very
I
good.
think that's why it doesn't take a position. It is having it both ways, because it's saying
Yeah.
it is both.
And it may be that, you know, that one of those great ideas that habits create feelings. You know, my favorite example is for the mother to say to the 4-year-old, say thank you. I don't feel like it. Just do it. I don't care if you don't feel like it. On the assumption that it's important to do it, but the doing may create what Aristotle calls a disposition to do it. A disposition is not an action, it's a readiness to do the action, okay? That's why the shortstop fields lots of grounders, to create the disposition, the readiness. The readiness is not fielding a grounder. It's the presupposition for being able to field a grounder. So it may be that law and feeling, we could say it in two ways. Law and feeling are both important here, but it may be that following the law becomes the foundation for doing the feeling. That's how we come to recognize its rightness. Yes?
I think that also it could speak to two different types of people. If you are the natural empath that walks by and sees this animal, you want to help it.
Mhm.
You're not the kind of person that would refrain from raising it. This doesn't apply. It's just your natural inclination. But if you are the kind of person that would refrain from raising it, this law is in place to then make you do the action. So for some people it may be a law, and for those it doesn't apply because you don't need a law to do this thing that you already feel is right.
I sense that you're prioritizing one over the other. Tell me your name, please.
Sonia.
Sophia?
Sonia.
Sonia. I think, Sonia, tell me if I'm wrong, that your view is that the feeling ought to be primary. We ought to feel something about the condition of this animal and this person. But if you don't feel it, here's a law to make you do it anyway. Is that your view?
I think so.
Yeah, so here's a difference between utopian and non-utopian thinking. Non-utopian thinking recognizes the need for law. You don't feel like it? Tough. Do it. Whereas a society in which everybody feels these things is really an example of the basic meaning of the word utopia. It's nowhere. We're not going to be creating a society where everybody is feeling the need of everybody else. And therefore, law becomes necessary not just for social order, but for creating dispositions. The law also has an educative function as well as an enforcement function. What about the last part of this? You must nevertheless, so when you see the ass of your enemy lying under its burden and would refrain from raising it, you must nevertheless raise it with him. I could, if I were writing this, especially after this conversation, I would not add the last two words. You must do it. Okay. So this is the challenge to the one who's confronting an enemy's ass. He doesn't want to do it. He wants to refrain from doing it. Go do it. Feel it for sure, but if you don't feel it, do it anyway. And I'm also treating my enemy, the one who hates me, as somebody who has dignity. He's not just an enemy. He's like me in a certain way. He's made in the image of God. And I also have to recognize that. Having done that, all of that, forget the words with him. If it stopped without that, we would say this is extraordinarily rich. Look at how much we've gotten out of this. So why add with him? I'm gonna raise the donkey. Vivian?
I would suggest that if he hasn't raised the donkey himself, it's because it's too hard for one person to do it.
Yes.
And you gotta help him.
You got to help him, but with him means he's going to have to do.
He's gotta help you too.
He's got to help you too.
You can't do it yourself.
This is is this also an imperative for the hater, for the enemy? that the enemy can't just sit back and have the person who is rising to the occasion to do it. The enemy has to, or conversely, if he doesn't help me, does this absolve me of the obligation? It says with him, from which I might infer, if we don't do it together, if he's not helping me, I'm absolved. And by the way, the rabbis are of two minds about this. One, he is absolved, the other, he isn't. In other words, Rabbinic Judaism isn't utopian. It's not asking me to put aside all of my impulses. Hey, you know what? This is my enemy, and I don't feel like helping him, so I'm not going to do it. I am going to do it, in spite of myself. But doggone it, if he's not going to help me, I feel absolved. So what's the answer here? What do you feel about this? Is he absolved? If the enemy is not helping, why not? You're sitting around here. I'm stopping to help you. Human nature. Isn't human nature involved here? And isn't there some, let's suppose that the majority of the rabbis, maybe even the majority of us, feels he should do it anyway. But that involves self-overcoming. Because I'm reaching out, and if he's going to sit around, he's going to get a Coke. And he's going to, thank you for stopping. Let me know when you're done. Doggone it, I'm not going to do it. So is this a recognition of human nature, or is it an attempt to surmount it? Jackie?
You can turn the story around as well by offering, let me help you. He has to interact with you. He is your enemy. And with the interaction, there could be conversation, interaction, and it can turn out to be a positive situation.
I like that. So Jackie's point is, don't just do it. Try to engage in some connection. Let me help you is already presupposes we're going to do this together. And why would I want to do it together? Well, he's a human being like I am. And I'm not going to see his eneminess as the ultimate category by which I'm going to understand him. So the with him is something that needs to be introduced at the beginning. Let me help you. In other words, the author here put the with him in the wrong place. The with him should be the presupposition. But what if the guy says no? Thank you for offering to help me, but you know what? You want to do it? Do it. Bob?
Another point would be to not help the enemy is you're at war. This is my enemy. You dehumanize him because he's your enemy. So you look at him as an entity that I shouldn't help.
Yeah, yes.
You're lowering him.
And that was essentially Paul's point, too. If I see this person as having a certain, let's call it static essence, that's a better way of saying this. He's my enemy, period. And enemies, by definition, are fearful. And I don't want to get involved with this at all because this might turn out to be a very dangerous. I'm presupposing that the enemy is going to be grateful. Maybe he's not going to be grateful. So there's another way to. So it heightens the value or the call to self-overcoming. In other words, it's not utopian. It's not that I'm fully going to transform this guy. We're going to become great friends. You know, we're going to go to services together. But nevertheless, I'm called to do something that may be fraught. I think the fraught part of this is not incidental. Other comments about it, Steve?
I think whether your enemy joins you help the donkey, physical ability and so on, that in whatever those reasons are, we can't know it precisely, so we must do it.
Boy, that's a strong statement. So Steve is suggesting here that this whole question about with him, what's he doing in this, is really irrelevant. I mean, how very Kantian of you. If you see that there is an imperative incumbent upon you, this is Kant's point. The value of an action has to do only with motivation, not with consequences. The utilitarians are asking, what's the outcome? And the better the outcome, the more it's incumbent upon me. For Kant, it's all internal. If you decide that this is something you must do, what the context, the other person is irrelevant. So let's think about this. I mean, what about that? Because one of the things we've developed here in our discussion is that this is a kind of proto-community. These are two people facing a situation. And part of our conversation is they ought to find a way to work together, to recognize one another's humanity. So this may be taken as sort of in little the nature of a realistic and not an idealistic community. The ideal is beyond us. But we can create community here by seeing the dignity of the other. What Steve is suggesting here is that really this is not at bottom about community. This is about an individual facing a dilemma. And how he resolves this is what this is all about. I mean, there are passages here. I see a couple of them in my notes. Deuteronomy 23, verse 8. Don't hate. Leviticus 19. Don't hate your neighbor. You remember that passage. It says, don't hate your neighbor in your heart. You shall chastise him, but do it correctly so that you don't bear a grudge and so that you don't seek violence. Love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, that passage in Leviticus points out a process by which I can eliminate hate in my heart. By going to the person I dislike and saying, look, this is what you did wrong. In other words, to move from hate to love is a very, very difficult thing to do, according to this passage. What Steve is suggesting here is the heck with process. You should, the goal here is to purify, maybe that's not the word you use, who you are.
Hold my humanity.
Hold on to my humanity. Very good, very good. Jackie?
Yeah, we're using the word hate a lot. But what is the definition of hate? And what does somebody feel when they hate somebody else?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
It's very difficult. What is hate? Hate is not liking, it's not loving, but then what's love?
It also says, I mean, the Leviticus passage says, don't hate your neighbor in your heart.
What is hate?
So this is a passion that can eventuate in an action. I'm just taking a stab here. I don't know. These are, what is love? You know, the Greeks have 4 different words for love because love is a complicated kind of emotion. Friendship is a kind of love. Philadelphia, philia, and so on. Arthur.
So I never noticed this before, but in verse, I think it's 5, there's the word robase. Now, what's interesting about me is, the word robase is one of the central words in the first story of hate, going back to your point, what is hate? The first story of hate, I think, in the Bible is with Cain and Abel.
Yeah.
And God speaks to Cain, which is an amazing thing. He favors Abel's sacrifice. He only talks to Cain. And he says, sin crouches at the door.
Yeah.
And its urge will overpower you.
Is for
The
you.
word urge is robase.
Creeps, yeah.
So the central treatment of the core concept of hate
Yes.
is quoted here in this verse.
Oh, that's a very nice point. As if the word creeps at the door is a better way of saying it. So that hatred, it has a kind of, there's an active verb that applies to hate, as if hate is an entity that is after me.
It says sin couches at the door, God says to Cain. The urge is towards you.
Yeah.
The rovex is the urge of hate. It can overcome you.
Yeah, but an urge is a vector. It's moving somewhere. Yeah.
And here it is, this thing from Cain and Abel is in the middle of a passage about your enemy's animal. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's, okay. Paul, and then,
Thank you. I recall reading about 5 years ago, conversation and it kind of takes a lot of guesswork out of it, in that he basically says everything that we have gone through is an experiential lesson that we have to learn from.
yeah.
So when you're being told to love the neighbor and the stranger equally, it's because we should remember that we were not loved.
No?
We were hated. And
Yeah.
we were not a pleasant neighbor and a pleasant stranger.
Yeah.
So underlying everything that we do, God wants us to have a memory of hard lessons learned
Right.
to guide us. And if we really do that, it kind of takes away some doubt, because
Takes away what?
doubt,
Doubt.
because what he's suggesting is just look to your experience as people,
Yeah.
and you'll see what I was trying to tell you.
Yeah, no, Paul's making an interesting point here. There's a lot to say about it, actually. That history, the founder of modern sociology, Max Weber, did something very powerful. He created for us, or he put forward the idea that is and ought are very different. You can't derive oughts from is. Is the way things are. Oughts, imperatives, come from another place. The Jewish tradition disagrees with this separation, just in the way that you have said. History, which is the domain of is, here is what happened. And if Weber is right, I can derive no imperative from the way things are or have been. But the Jewish tradition believes that that history, in a way, is a morality tale, and that we can derive all kinds of imperatives from our history. Honor the stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You were strangers of the land of Egypt is an is. This is what was. Honor the stranger, because honor the stranger is derived from what happened in history. So that's another dimension of Judaism being an historical religion, because history is filled with imperatives. Of course, different people can derive different things out of this. You shall punish your enemies because we were punished by the Egyptians. One could imagine that sort of imperative. But that's not what we, even, it says that you shall love the Edomite and the Egyptian. The Edomite is Esau, Jacob's brother, and the Egyptian, what's the idea there? Because they gave hospitality to you in the land of Egypt. I mean, they were there 500 years. It turned sour the last 60. So that the Egyptians, doggone it, were also hospitable. For how long? 2 days, 3 days? No, 450 years. That's a long hospitality. Maya?
So I'm trying to find the Genesis 8. It says, Yahweh said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore for men's sake, because the imagination of the man's heart is evil from his youth.
Yep. Yes, and what are you driving?
So the rules and regulations are exactly to curb that evil.
Yeah, that's a good point. First of all, by the way, God decides to destroy the earth because of the very same thing. Then after the flood, God decides, wait a minute now. If I start there, I got to recognize I can't go ahead and do this every time. So God learns a lesson from history, right? I wanted to destroy the wicked ones. Wait a minute now. What generation isn't going to have wicked ones? Am I going to be spending eternity destroying generations? No, I'm going to decide to have Rahmanas. I'm not going to be utopian. God starts by being a utopian. And he decides, no, I'm not going to do that. Okay, Michael, that's good.
I'd like to challenge your distinction between Kant and utilitarian.
Okay, very good.
And endorse what Steve said.
Uh-oh.
So, I think you said that Kant says what matters is the motivation,
Yes,
not the effect.
right.
And I think what Steve is saying is, no, it's not the effect on other people, it's the effect on yourself of the act.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you should do it not with any expectation that you have any power to change anybody else, but through the act of doing it, you become a better person and you erode the power of your capacity for hate.
In your formulation, that too is utilitarian.
That's right. That's why I'm challenging it.
Okay, you're challenging it. But I think that Steve's view is, I'm going to speak for Steve now, is that the act of ridding yourself of this hatred is itself important, and not so much what comes from it.
I think I'm saying the same thing as Steve.
The origins are, we have a commandment here. So we can't compromise on the commandment because of what we perceive the motivation of another person is. We can't know that.
Yes.
So the commandment still holds, no matter whether they help or don't help, whether they've tried or not tried. It doesn't matter.
That's a
The obligation is there.
That's a Kantian view. That is a Kantian view. What Kant is trying to do is to secularize biblical morality. He's trying to put in rational terms what the Bible, we can reason out whether this is my obligation. And if I decide by a certain rational method, Kant has a method, then I have to do it, irrespective of its impact. Is that your view?
Yes. The last piece, irrespective of its impact, I want to sort of, it's important what the impact is. It's not unimportant.
Kant does not disagree with you. He recognizes there are consequences. It's just those consequences should not figure in your decision what to do. The consequences are irrelevant to the logic of morality. That's Kant's view. And that seems to be your view. Of course there are consequences. Vivian.
What I'm hearing is, Na'aseh Nishma. Well, do it first. It doesn't matter what you're thinking, because you haven't heard it yet. You just know the rule, but you don't understand what it's about. But if you do it enough, maybe you'll come to hear it.
See, that's a great point, I think. Na'aseh stands by itself. Do it. If the nishma happens, if you come to understand it, so much the better. But that's not the point. The point is to do it. So this is what we might call, this is an appeal to the will, not to reason. Now Maimonides spends, 30% of the guide giving us all the reasons for the commandments. Because Maimonides wants to also be an Aristotelian, that these aren't just functions of the will. But what you're suggesting is, we say Na'aseh v'nishma as if it's one unit. You're breaking the two things apart a little bit. The Na'aseh stands by itself. Once we decide that something is right, and that's a tough thing to do. I mean, the utilitarians do it one, the Kantians do it another. A guy like Alistair McIntyre says that all obligations are grounded in the particular community in which you live. There are no universal imperatives. If my community says do X, this is the origin. So he's arguing at what we call a communitarian point. Other people, I mean, David Hume, for example, I have a natural sympathy or antipathy to certain things. So that morality is grounded in my emotions, for Kant in reason, for McIntyre in the community. We're wading in deep waters here.
I don't think we have to decide that it's right before we do it.
Ah,
I mean, what we said before Na'aseh v'nishma is everything God told us we will do.
there you go.
Just, we've been told what we should do, and so we've got to do it.
Yeah. So Vivian says, what might we call this kind of morality? I mean, if it's an imperative, all thoughts, you can come to some thinking about it after you've done it, but you're called upon to do it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. By the way, just another aside. This is just what Spinoza really had a problem with. The authority of the clerics to tell us what to do. And they do it, according to Spinoza, for their own aggrandizement. This solidifies their power. And they're basing this on a text, the Bible, which Spinoza spends hundreds of pages showing has no right to be venerated. And therefore, his whole point is, whoever is telling you, do it, and if I say, why? No, don't ask why. Do it. Well, why should I do it? Because I said so. If it's God or if it's God's emissaries, that is dangerous to society. That's Spinoza's revolution, really, because he's arguing for free speech. And the church, he thought the synagogue too, which excommunicated him, is basing its authority on very shallow grounds. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to another real simple, straightforward topic, and that is abortion. Exodus 21. This is the basic passage from which abortion thinking emerges, to the degree to which you think the Bible is a normative book. So Exodus 21, verse 27. How much ink has been spilled on this? Where am I here? 21. 22. There you go. Yeah. Oh, I see. My 7 should be a 2. Okay. When men fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined according as the woman's husband may exact from him, the payment to be based on the reckoning. But if other damage ensues, same word, ason, then the penalty should be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. Okay? So you have something happening to the fetus, and that eventuates in an evaluation and the possible punishment. Okay? So the question here is wrongful killing of a fetus murder? If it is, then any kind of abortion is wrong. If it isn't, then some forms of abortion can be right. Okay? So let's go back and look, because that's not terribly straightforward. When men fight, and one of them pushes a pregnant woman, and a miscarriage results. So let me suggest to you what we're to infer from this. The fetus dies. A miscarriage eventuates in the death of a fetus. But no other damage ensues. Okay. Well, what other damage could ensue? The fetus is already dead. The harm or death of the mother. Okay? And no other damage. The fetus dies through the miscarriage, but the mother nothing happens to her, something like that. Then the one responsible shall be fined. If this eventuated in a capital crime, then a fine would not be the appropriate punishment. But the one responsible shall be fined. What's the damage here? The damage is the death of the fetus, for which the penalty is a fine, according to the woman's husband may exact from him, the payment to be based on reckoning. Okay, so this therefore, I'll say it and then you'll see what you think, to be no foundation for the claim that abortion is murder in any moment prior to the fetus changing status by becoming born. Okay? And the rabbis say that the first breath is out of the womb, is when the fetus becomes a human being. Even if the fetus, I think, should put his hand out, becomes a human. Before that, the fetus is not mere tissue. The fetus has the status of what we might call a prima facie human being, a potential human being. And that's why our tradition does not just treat lightly the idea of abortion, because this fetus is not mere tissue. It has a right to be born, all things being equal. And if they're not, if the mother is suffering, if the mother is deathly ill, you can take the fetus, because the life of the mother is prior to the life of the fetus. Once that fetus is born, you can't do that.
This implies, I wonder if it mitigates a little bit the conclusion, because it seems that the loss of the fetus is inadvertent. It's not that the person is pushing the mother to kill the fetus and abort it. It's kind of inadvertently the fetus was damaged. And that seems to somehow make it harder to draw conclusions.
It's a good point here, although this is a forced birth, and therefore we might say that somebody is culpable of a capital crime if feticide is infanticide. Wouldn't you say the logic is substantially the same?
It strikes me as maybe the difference between manslaughter and murder.
First degree and second degree. Okay, yeah. That's an interesting point. Okay. Lou?
The passage seems to indicate that the damage is due to the situation. You know, if you, you know, third person would say you should have an abortion, you know, that's one thing. You know, that would be like, you know, causing, you know, economic or potential harm to the family, but if the family itself says, oh, you know, I want to have an abortion, you know, that they're, they can absorb the economic consequences of it, in a sense.
And why is that relevant to this?
Well, I mean, it seems like, you know, that, you know, the damages are due to the lost benefits of the potential child.
Yeah.
So that seems to be so that if it's a, you know, you know, if it's your own damages, you know, if you're absorbing your own damages, it's not the same as someone telling you, you know, you're causing damages, an external person, you know, to your family or to whoever decision making, you know, is causing it to be, what do you call it, to happen. So I guess the problem, the deal becomes, you know, when the husband believes one way and the wife believes another way, then, you know, that's where things get murky.
Right, that's right. So, but Lou's idea here is there are gray situations here during the life of the fetus as a fetus in which there may be difference, there may be a problem, and even the Jewish tradition recognizes that though prima facie, that is initially, the fetus has a right to be born, all other things being equal. There are lots of circumstances in which they're not. Traditional Judaism believes that if the fetus comes to be what is known as a rodef, a pursuer, namely pursuing the mother's well-being, that and only, not well-being, life, that and only that is the warrant for, but even the strict Orthodox believe that feticide is not in all circumstances homicide. There are exceptions. The question is, how broad are the exceptions? The Orthodox are very narrow, only if the fetus is really assaulting the mother's health. But more liberal traditions have other criteria. For example, if the mother is feeling psychologically very, very distressed, and it's affecting her and it's affecting her family, that becomes a possible reason for abortion. If the economic circumstances of the family, which are already perilous, are tipped over and go down the cliff by another child, my gosh, I already have 11. I always think of Bach in this regard. Bach had 20 children, and he wrote a cantata a week. There's only one explanation for this: no internet. God. What are you doing, Johann? I'm online. Come to bed. Okay, so once we've opened up the possibility that there are justifications for abortion, the question is how narrow, how broad. Larry?
What does the tradition say about adoption and how adoption might affect this decision?
You know, I don't know, frankly. I could start guessing, but I don't know. There's a lot on this, but I don't know it. Yeah. Joan?
I see that you can interpret this in many ways. I think if a pregnant woman is so close to him, how are they fighting, verbally or physically? Physically, what is she doing so close to the fight?
Yeah. No, it's true. It's a good point, because when you base your decision on a situation, this is not just rules, then you're inevitably going to certain aspects of the situation and not on others. And one retort might be, but what about if the mother got too close? But this author wants to focus on certain elements of the situation in order to draw his conclusions. But I think it's a good point. That once you start doing situational ethics, everything can become very, very murky. Chad?
This, to me, is fact that obviously deals with accidental injury, not voluntary abortion.
Yes.
So it's hard for me to make this apply to a woman choosing to abort. One thing that does come from this, to me, is that the life of the fetus is punished by a fine.
Yes.
Unless there's injury to the mother.
Yes.
In which it's punished by death.
Yeah, exactly.
There's clearly a difference between the value of the fetus and the mother.
And the interpreters tend to translate ason as death, no further damage. So they raise the stakes here. But I think you're right. What's the status of the fetus? The fetus definitely doesn't have the status of a human being. And I think that's all that really matters, because you've aborted it. If it were a human being, okay, that's more the Catholic position, that the fetus is always a human being, just of a certain status. By the way, I recently read something about the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation, which understands the word ason, which is translated here as damage, as form. And that tradition thinks that any stage of the forming of the fetus is that it's a human being. And therefore, the Septuagint translation of the Bible tends to be the origin of the Roman Catholic understanding of this situation. Because the fetus is always in some formation or another. Yeah. Why, Maya?
Interesting that in Hebrew it's Yeled, it's child.
Yes. It's Yeladim, isn't it?
Yeled.
Yeah, it's plural, and who knows why that is. I mean, that is a problem. V'yatzu yeladeha. It's her children, right? Oh, thanks so much. Okay, well, yeah. So Arthur, and then Steve, and then we'll stop.
So, I mean, this is back in these days, I'm not surprised, but the person in this passage that this is quoted is the woman. And it reminds me, in the age of Napoleon, when Napoleon issued his laws, he said every child and man should have the right to be wanted. So every parish or place where any unwanted child be given up and cared for by the state, it had to be revoked in a year because a third of all the births were given up.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So if you're going to have a woman who's going to bear the child and care for the child,
Yes.
weigh in on this, it gets a lot more complicated.
No question. No, that's right. And that, I think, tends to be the more liberal approach to this. What's going on with the woman? This is not just the fetus, and the woman happens to be, in objective terms, the bearer. What about her opinions on it? Or her opinions as shaped by and shaping the family constellation, her views or her husband's views, or the number of children, or the economic, and so on. Steve?
I'm struck by that it's the woman's spouse imposes upon.
Yes.
It's not a fixed fine.
Mm-hmm.
So there's agency here,
Mm-hmm.
which is often what's going on in our current debate about abortion and who has agency.
Yeah.
But also, this is saying it's largely not in the realm of a courtroom or of laws, because this is the injured party if you expand the woman's spouse to include the woman and the spouse as a family unit. It's not a legal thing. outside the legal, otherwise they would have said, we're gonna impose a fine, and then the courts will make sure that the fine is imposed. This is people, this is people to people.
It's what?
Friedman's translation is he will give it by the judges.
Yeah, that's right. Well, plilim can be understood as judges. Yeah, there it is at the end of verse 22. So some translations do bring society into it, but not this one. Yeah, so in my text it says the payment to be based on reckoning, then the footnote, others translate it as the judges determine. And you could feel a little pressure because what you're saying really is that the limits of this conversation are the walls of the family's home. But you could imagine the state would want to get involved, whether it be a good thing or not.
But it's, the state is less involved here
Yes.
than in other areas where the law is established.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Now, it's a good point. This is not even family law. This is family preference. Yeah. Okay, so you can see the power of the point that I made at the very beginning. The Ten Commandments, the chapter before, lovely, important ideas. But look at the details once the authors begin to worry about the hows and the whats and the whens. So Mishpatim, although for all its complexity, to some degree imponderability, we can't get to the bottom of some of it, really takes on the question of how day in and day out are we going to deal with some of these situations. We'll continue next week. Shabbat Shalom. Nice to see you too.
I understand you did a funeral Friday, not 8 days ago, for Alan London's sister.
I didn't do that.
Oh, you didn't?
No. Right. I talked to him. Can I put it back together again? Because was it you who reminded me that his son was killed in Israel?
Yes.
And he and I talked about that a little. I think it deeply affected his wife.
He is the reason in Cleveland.
I think maybe you mentioned that. Okay, you work with or for?
Well, he works with me.
He works with you.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
He's now in Indiana.
That's
isn't
right.
he? Yeah. I haven't seen him in years, but that's good. We had talked about, and I think you may have even gotten back to me, about having coffee or lunch.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't get back to you.
Okay, thank you for saying that.
Partly because I could tell that you've been pretty busy with other things, so I held off.
Don't hold off.
Okay.
You know, I'll let you know if I can do it or not. But you might suggest a couple of days,
Yeah.
and
I
we'll do
will.
it. And I can come down to you. You're downtown, aren't you?
Well, not yet. I'm actually in Brooklyn.
You're in Brooklyn, on
But
the west
Brooklyn
side.
Yeah, but it's sort of west side.
Okay.
It's convenient.
We'll find a place. Good.
I'm over here a lot.
Good. You're involved. Are you involved in the choir?
No.
I thought.
Just for a variety of reasons, I've developed some relationships, and they're more over here than they are on the west side.
Nice. Very good. Excellent. You've gotten involved pretty fast.
Sorry?
You've gotten involved pretty fast.
I have, yeah. People have received me warmly.
But you also have the capacity to reach out, if not physically, emotionally. You reach yourself out into where you are. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Perhaps so.
I don't know. Oh, it really is. Yeah, this is not just theory. This is how to live life.
I just love this.
Oh, good. Yeah, there is rich, isn't it?
Getting back to the more serious question of the day, your contemporary, what was the most popular name? Right, like, my case, God. It was like, most of my friends were named Richard. I mean, you know,
chance